In this episode of Restore It, I'm going to continue with the mini restoration on the 325i Touring. In the first episode, I said I had finished removing parts from the interior as I didn't want to get carried away with this project. I simply need it to work and look as good as possible. Well, in this one, I'm going to be getting ever so slightly carried away as I remove even more parts and dig a little deeper, which does risk finding large issues that I won't be able to ignore, but really, that's all part of the fun. So after the first episode, I removed a number of parts including the two front wings, which I'm going to save once the new repair panels arrive. The headliner came out and I'm still looking at several options for the new fabric. I'm very interested to hear what experiences you guys have had with different companies, as I'm still not 100% sure where I should get the new material from. And that goes for the material on the front seats as well. One thing I touched on briefly last time was the immobiliser delete I did between the last series and this one. If I can remember correctly, I think we were successful with the removal, but we didn't get the car running as it wouldn't crank. The starter motor was making some strange noises, which led us to believe that it was seized. In this episode, I'm going to find out if it has or not. I'm also going to remove this door and have a closer look to see if it's worth saving. These things used to sell for £30 to £50 each second hand. These days, people are asking anywhere from £80 to £250, so it might be worth the effort. The first job I'm going to do in this episode is one of the most annoying, and that's removing the starter motor, which is hidden right at the back of the engine bay, down by the gearbox. But before I do that, I want to quickly tell you about my new favourite portable speaker, the Soundcore Boom 2. As some of you will know, I like to wear headphones whilst I'm filming. However, when the camera is off, I like to listen to my tunes and podcasts through a speaker. Headphones can become uncomfortable after prolonged periods of use, so I need something loud enough to beat the tools, portable so I can have it anywhere in the workshop, and tough enough to withstand the workshop environment as well as any adventure that might come my way. So if you're like me, this speaker is perfect. The Bass Up 2.0 feature makes the sound quality crystal clear and it puts out heart-pounding bass. The Soundcore Boom 2 is also IPX7 waterproof, which means it's so waterproof it's floatable and can actually be used in the sea or a swimming pool, so the odd spill in the workshop is no trouble at all. Now this Soundcore Boom 2 isn't even released yet. It launches on the 11th of March, and if you sign up to their pre-release, they'll give you a code which will get you these Soundcore V30i open earbuds completely free. All you have to do is click the link at the top of the video description to gain access to the code. We'll come back to this speaker and its features later on, but for now, big thanks to Soundcore for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the touring. So first things first, I'm going to get the car on the ramp and undo the bottom bolt holding in the starter motor, which is quite difficult to get to. With the bottom one off, I can now bring the car down, remove the top bolt and then the starter itself. This job is not only tricky to do, but also to catch on film. It's in the most awkward position possible and getting a ratchet in there isn't easy, let alone a camera. Now that we've got it on the bench, I can do two tests to see if the motor and the solenoid are working. Well, that's a dead motor. And that's a dead solenoid, which makes this one very dead starter, and that means I'm going to have to order a new one as I don't have any spare, and I'll install it in a coming episode. Moving on for now, I'm going to remove the driver's side door because it's either going to be replaced or restored. Because the door card and everything attached to it is staying either way, I'm going to remove them now and add them to the ever-growing collection of parts. With the door card off, I've come across the classic mouldy, moisture or vapour barrier that all 30s seem to have. I'm going to remove this as well so I can get a better look at the inside to see if there's any rust. Now I can focus on removing the door itself, starting with the main white connector, which probably hasn't been moved since it was first plugged in, as it's very, very stuck. With that loose, I can now undo the circlip holding the hinge brake pin in place and disconnect the hinge brake itself. And finally, I can now remove the two door hinge bolts that prevent the door from falling off. Removing the door via these two bolts and not the actual hinge bolts will save me the job of realigning it when I go to reinstall it. Taking a good look at the door, apart from the deep scratches on the outside, it's in pretty good shape up here. It's down at the bottom where things take a turn for the worst. That's quite a lot of rust and missing door. The rust problem seems to run all the way along the bottom and continue up the sides underneath a bead of sealant. I'm very interested to hear what you guys would do with this door. Would you just replace it, or would you try and save it? I think you know which one I'm leaning more towards, but this is Restore It after all. So if you'd like to see that video, do let me know down in the comments. Anyway, we'll come back to that later, as I've just realised I forgot to remove the inner sunroof panel, which will also need new fabric fitting at the same time the headliner is done. Even just removing this is a bit of a faff. I won't be removing any more of the sunroof mechanism, as they're quite complicated things and are not fun to mess around with. With that out of the way, I can now focus on removing all of the loose rust from the sunroof panel, clean the drain holes and remove the old foam and glue left by the old headliner. Before I do that, I want to quickly remove the old foam that fell onto the carpet as I was removing the headliner, as it's not something I want to be treading in. And whilst I'm here, I might as well give it a really good clean. After vacuuming each area, I'm applying a carpet cleaner and working it in with a brush attachment in a drill. I'm then giving it one more vacuum before drying with a clean cloth. I did this for both sides and the carpet has come up really nice. It's probably the cleanest I've ever seen it. With that done, I'm going back to the sunroof and I'm going to take this opportunity to clean out the sunroof drain holes, which will make sure no water will build up anywhere and ruin the rust-free roof. With all of the loose rust gone, I can now feed this large steel wire down the hole and make sure nothing is blocking the path. I'm also going to be blowing compressed air down there just for good measure. I'm pretty sure these drain holes are working as intended considering the condition of the roof and the surrounding area, but it's still worth taking the time to do it, as it's not very often you have the headliner and sunroof out. The same then went for the rears, only for these ones I had to remove the hoses at the top to gain access. There is a little bit of rust underneath where the hose sits, so I'll have to remove that and paint over before I can reattach the hoses. As I was cleaning all of the drain holes, I decided it would be a good idea to remove the front section of the carpet, because firstly I want to have a good look underneath and see how good or bad it is, and two, I'm going to be welding the front corners, so it should really come out anyway. To get the carpet out, I first need to remove the centre console and handbrakes around. This is never an easy task with an E30, as it's tucked into so many places and isn't really designed to be removed. Getting it past the throttle pedal is an absolute nightmare, but I just cannot risk a car fire during the welding. After much more effort than I'm showing you here, it's finally out and I'm again shocked to see just how little rust is under here. That 325i Sport has really skewed my perception on E30s as a whole. This Touring is in such good condition in comparison, which is great news and makes me feel a lot better about not doing a full nut and bolt restoration. The two front corners will need welding, but from here that looks to be about it. Before I move on to the next job, I just want to give Soundcore another shout out, as their Boom 2 speaker has become something I use on a daily basis. With 24 hours of playtime, I never have to worry about it running out, even after a long day in the workshop. And if I forget to charge it one night, it will easily do another day's work. And speaking of charge, the Boom 2 speaker also acts as a power bank for charging phones, tablets, and even the Soundcore V30i open-ear charging case. The app allows you to customise the 9-band Pro equaliser and choose different LED lighting options that look absolutely great. So not only does this speaker sound great with its 80 watt output and look fantastic with its lighting options, it's useful and durable. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, you can link over 100 of these speakers together to make a portable sound system. So once again, to get your code and receive the soundcore open earbuds for free, click the link at the top of the video description now. Big thanks once again to Soundcore for sponsoring the episode. Let's get back to it. Up next, I'm going to remove the rest of this aftermarket immobiliser that has caused me so much annoyance in the past. It was fitted before I bought the car and I've put up with it for most of the 6 years I've owned it. But recently it's refusing to work 90% of the time and has sometimes had me sat there for 10 plus minutes trying to get the car to start. So hopefully the delete I've done off camera is good, but we'll find out as soon as the new starter motor goes in. Whilst I wait for that starter to arrive, I may as well get on with the less fun job of removing all of the old headliner foam and glue from the chassis. This stuff is super sticky and a bit of a nightmare to get off. So to do so, I'm going to use this glue and tar remover from Genelite, which really speeds things up. I'm going to start with the front driver's door and work my way around with some Scotch-Brite. It's taking a lot of scrubbing, but the results are satisfying enough to justify the effort. With all of the doors done, I can now move on to the sunroof where the fabric is glued and pinched in place along the front and rear sides. This is actually a lot more satisfying than I thought it was going to be. So that's the front done, now for the rear. For some reason, this strip is a lot stickier and thicker than the rest of beam. I'm having to resort to a super fine grit sanding pad to get the last of it off. As you can see, the paint has also come off, so this area will need to be primed and painted along with the rest of the car when the time comes. The same now is needed on the inside, as the headliner fabric is glued to both sides of the door frame and is then held in place with the door seals. That's the right side done, now for the left. With all of the glue and foam gone, I can now remove the very little rust I saw around the drain hole pipes and in the sunroof, and the car will be ready for its new headliner. So now, these really are all of the parts I'll be removing from the top of the car. I'm not going any deeper than this as it's really not needed. I will be making a start on the underside of the car soon, but first there's plenty of things for me to be getting on with just with these parts alone. So that's all I had time for this episode, but I'll be back much sooner than I have been this time, as I've kind of filmed 2 episodes worth, and I've resisted the temptation to make one really long episode, as I want to be consistent as possible. So stay tuned, as the next episode will be with you very soon. There's so much to do, but I'm really enjoying working on the E30s again, and I hope you're enjoying it too. Please do let me know what you would do with that door, and if you'd like to see a restoration on it or not. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now.